Hello, this is Steve Holland, and today we're going to look at comparison and contrast as a structure for writing essays. Now, comparison and contrast is a very useful structure. We're using it more to describe, building upon description, but consider that it also has the opportunity for use in the argument. And as you move along with your writing experiences, you will find that it's a good thing to come back to the structure of comparison and contrast. Now you will need to know that there are two basic building blocks for comparison and contrast essay. One is block, or some call it subject by subject, and the other is alternating, and some to call it point by point. Now in the block method, you describe one part of the thing that you're comparing and contrasting all in one place. For example, many years ago, as a sports writer, I had the opportunity to be on board, so to speak, when the University of Iowa opened up its new indoor arena, the Carver Hawkeye Arena. Everybody was very excited about that. And then game went against the Hawkeyes that night, but everyone was very excited about the new building. You know, there were no beams, no pillars, that you had to look around, much like in the old field house. But everybody had read so many articles about how there were so many lights and pillars and seats and rows, and it didn't seem to me that in writing about the field house and the arena the next day that it mattered very much any of those details. So what I did was I wrote about the experience that night in the new Carver Hawkeye Arena, and then I walked over to the old field house and I did a block method where I talked all about the wonderful experience that thousands of people had at the new building. And then when I was done writing about that, I wrote about the three guys who played a game of pickup or cutthroat basketball in the old field house. And it turned out to be a very nice piece, a very general feeling came out of it, that although many people were very happy about the excitement to come in the new arena, you kind of had to feel sorry for the disappearing importance of the old field house on the horizon. Because say what you will about having to peek around those beams, when you stomped your feet, you drove the other team nuts. So, who had the better experience? I was able to conclude perhaps not the thousands who saw the Hawkeyes lose that night, but maybe the three who had the old field house all themselves. Okay, so you get that point. Now, with alternating style, what you do is you go back and forth between elements as you compare and contrast within the main body. For example, if I were to buy a new car, which I haven't had to do for several years, but I compare and contrast such things as mileage, insurance, safety, initial costs, and it seemed to me that the alternating style was much better for that. For example, if I said, well, what miles per gallon can one car get over the other? Then I moved on to another point. What are the insurance costs for one over the other? And then I went over another point. What are the initial costs between one and the other? In that case, we went back and forth between each, and that made it more important, the points that you were comparing contrast rather than style. In this case, style became somewhat less important, in fact, was way down the list, and it wasn't until I sorted through maybe 5 or 6 different types of cars, and I was seeing those types of things, the first, miles per gallon, insurance costs, initial costs, etc., show up as being very, very similar, that I finally could choose a car based on style. Okay. So the idea of communicating information to make meaningful comparisons and contrasts is the whole point between comparison and contrast. For example, if you say a donkey is unlike a Ford because one is an animal and the other is an automobile, that just isn't going to be very much news to anyone under the age or over the age of 1. However, to point out the similarities and differences between donkeys and mules, it could be funny, informative to a specific audience. You could compare and contrast a mule to your old Ford. Then it has some qualities of being stubborn, independent, slow, and don't we do that kind of thing? We give our cars names and human or sometimes other animal qualities that when we're pleased with it, and also when we're not so pleased with it. So, what you do now when you organize a comparison paper is that you want to fully understand the difference between block and alternating. Okay? So the block method to review gives you a clear picture of each item separately and then links the two with concluding generalization. If you're going to compare and contrast the education that you experience at Muscatine Community College versus, say, Harvard, you might compare and contrast these two different types of environments, all with one item first, all with the other second. It's probably more logically that you would have the first 2 years of college here at MCC, and then perhaps you move on to a 4-year school, and you're comparing and contrasting the different sorts of educational experiences between different institutions, which would be very, very appropriate to do and quite logical that you would comparing something new with something that you've experienced already. Okay, now the alternating method again to review is the second pattern. This pattern makes the individual points of comparison clear to the reader. That is, you are more focused upon the points that you're comparing and contrasting. Miles per gallon between, say, a GM product versus a Ford product. Costs, GM product, Ford product, or whatever product that you want, and back and forth you go, focusing on what are the exact reasons why you're going to buy one car over another, or what are the reasons why you selected going from one school to another, 2-year to 4-year, or even the first school that you had to decide where to go. What were the reasons? Costs, closeness to home, closeness to work, family, friends, etc. So comparison and contrast is a very useful type of essay, one that you will find that's very, very helpful in describing, one that allows you to sort out reasons and can make new conclusions, significant conclusions, and one that you can very easily see can be useful for argument. Good luck.